Hi, I'm Tiffany Devon, and I am a wardrobe stylist that styles influencers in fearless fashions. Do you pray? Do you pray? Do you really talk to God? I know, depending on where you are in your journey and in your faith, sometimes it can be hard to pray, especially during this season that we're in. But I want to leave something with you that I feel is going to inspire you to dive deeper in your own prayer journey with God. One of the things that I'm very fortunate that my parents instilled in me at a very young age was the gift of prayer. Now, I wasn't raised in church, but I can appreciate that they always told me that you can talk to God just like you talk to us. So if I didn't know anything else, I knew that I could always go to God. And so when I was about maybe 8 or 9 years old, I remember specifically asking God this question: how do you see the world? How can you be everywhere at the same time? Like, my little finite mind could not understand this God that can see everything at the same time, be everywhere at the same time. It just did not make sense to me. So I remember going downstairs in our basement. My mother had sent me to our basement to get something out of the freezer. And it was one of those old school freezers where you would lift the top up. And so as I lifted the top up, I'm looking and I'm scanning and looking for the item that she sent me downstairs in the basement to get. And as I was scanning and looking in this freezer, I heard God say to me, "This is how I see the world. I sit up high and I look low. And this is how I'm able to be everywhere at the same time." And it was just like, whoa. And from that point on, God made himself real to me at a very young age. And it was an experience that I would never, ever forget. And so as I journeyed through life and continued to get older, I always talked to God no matter what, whether it was during times of celebration, times of sadness, times of confusion, times of anger. Well, sometimes I was angry at God. but but I always stayed faithful to praying to him. God would then take my prayer life to a deeper level in 2018 when I walked away from a job that I had been at for 10 years. And he said to me, "In this season, I'm going to need you to press in and set aside time to hear what I have to say to you." Now I'm like, okay, I don't know what that looks like, because I didn't have a set aside time to God. It would be I could talk to God while I was driving, at night, whatever. And so I said, "Okay, God, I'll do that." I said, "But the moment that this prayer thing becomes legalistic or religious, I'm going to get bored. And I don't know if I'm going to be able to keep it up if I set aside time to come and talk to you and I'm always doing the talking and I don't hear you. I've got to hear you." And so I recognized as I continued to be faithful, and I would pray to God, especially at a time of uncertainty of not knowing what job I was going to get next. I found that God was starting to pour into me and he was starting to build me up. And I recognized during that season, I had went a couple of days without praying, and I started feeling anxious and I started feeling worried. And I was just like, why am I starting to feel anxious and worried? I just started feeling like I was sinking. And God said to me, "This is why I told you you have to set aside time to pray with me. Because the moment that you start veering off and start doing other things and do not put me first, the things that are going on in this world can get in you and it will start to sink your ship." And I was like, whew, okay. And I'm thankful for that season, because in 2020, in the midst of a pandemic, had I not started that season 2 years ago, woo. And let me tell you, just because I am a woman of faith does not mean that I have not been affected by what's going on in the world. I have been so anxious. I have suffered insomnia. And I'm just like, God, like, what's going on? And all God keeps saying to me in this season is, "My grace is sufficient." So every time I find myself wanting to get worked up and find myself being anxious and worried, I am always reminded of what he said to me. My grace is sufficient. And so in this season, I am going to challenge you, if you're not doing this already. And even if you are, there's still even deeper levels of prayer that we can do and go into with God. God wants to hear you. He wants to hear your voice. He wants you to be transparent with him. He wants you to be vulnerable with him. Sometimes we are looking to be vulnerable and transparent with other people when they can't give us what only can come from God. So if you've been wrestling in this season, if you've been saying like, oh no, that's not for me. I don't know. God is always still waiting in the wings for you to finally turn around and surrender and come to him so that he can keep you afloat in this season, because it's really going to be your prayers and hearing his voice that is going to be able to keep you how to walk in this season. My personal prayer in 2020 in the midst of this pandemic is, God, teach me how to move in chaos. I need you to teach me how to move in the midst of chaos. I can't look to how my friend is moving. I can't look to how this person over here is doing. What is the instruction and the step that you have for me and how I am to move? So I'm passing the baton to you. Go deeper in your prayer walk with God. I promise you, it is so rewarding and so fulfilling. You know what to do. If you have any comments, hit me down below, and I will talk to you next time.